Chair.
Good evening, Councilmember Quiroz Carter. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well, Mayor Parker. Thank you for asking. Same as everyone, tired, but we continue to press forward.
That's right. We do our duty for the people. I think that's a good one. And Mayor Pro Tem Montesino, how are you this evening?
I'm doing good, thank you,
Good.
everyone.
And Councilman Estrada, I was the father of one of the most amazing young citizens of Watsonville.
You mean my favorite constituent?
Yes.
She's good.
Good.
She's good. She's repeating everything, and now I'm trying not to say the words that she shouldn't be repeating.
You betcha.
To decrease that, yeah.
Everybody can raise their hand who's been in that spot. It's a very interesting and sometimes humorous or horribly embarrassing, depending on which moment it's in.
We're now live, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so do we have, can maybe we begin?
Yes.
Great. All right, welcome everyone. My name is Ari Parker. I'm the mayor of Watsonville. And we are here tonight, Thursday, January 20th, 2022, to follow our agenda in regards and hear about redistricting. So let's start with roll call, please.
Dutra,
Here.
Estrada,
Here.
Garcia,
Here.
Hurst,
Here.
Montesino,
Here.
Quiroz Carter.
Here.
Parker.
Here. Thank you. Okay, do I have a volunteer from our council members who'd like to start the pledge, or should I just go with it? And in that silence, I will go with it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
for all. Thank you very much. That angle when you stand, you got to watch that. All right. So we now have presentations and oral communications. This time is set aside for the members of the general public to address the council on any item not on the council agenda, which is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city council. No action or discussion shall be taken on any item presented, except that any council member may respond to statements made or questions asked, or may ask questions for clarification. All matters of an administrative nature will be referred to staff. All matters relating to council will be noted in the minutes and may be scheduled for discussion at a future meeting or referred to staff for clarification and report. All speakers are asked to announce their name in order to obtain an accurate record for the minutes. And we would also like you, if you could, to let us know what district you're in. And if you don't know, you can let us, we can help you with that. And we shall begin with oral communications from the public.
Steve, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I am Cabrillo, trustee for District 7, that's Ari's district, and resident of Palma Village. Three things. First of all, it's important for me to recognize the fact that for those of you who are not aware of this, and you're not going to be probably aware of it, there was a what appears to be a serious possible fight among Watsonville High School students on our Cabrillo campus in Watsonville this afternoon. I was on the campus of Cabrillo in Watsonville when this happened, and the police came on us in order to address the issue. One person had reportedly a knife and another one had a bat. Now, I don't speak for President Wetstein, and I don't speak for the other council of the other members of the Board of Trustees, but I assure you, we have no intention as at Cabrillo College and the Watsonville site of becoming an alternative site for any kind of violence. It's simply not going to happen, especially considering we're 3 days past the birthday of one of the most important Americans in our history, Martin Luther King Jr. So I want to let you know that the WPD, thank you, Chief Zamora, WPD for working very hard to intervene to make sure that this was settled, if not amicably, but peacefully. 2 other things, and that is, of course, I am going to continue to encourage Nick and the mayor and the city manager tomorrow and the other council members to encourage to take a serious look at an aviary in our beautiful Ramsey Park. It can be done as a demonstration project for relatively little money and would be a good thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. And our next speaker?
I don't see anyone else.
Okay. So then we can move on to oral communications from the council. And before I begin, I want to apologize to council for using first names. I noticed that about midway through last time. So I'm working on my council member, councilman, and councilwoman honorifics, and I will maintain that, but please let me know. I'm always learning. So we'll start with Councilman Lowell Hurst.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor Parker. We're always learning, and there's plenty to learn. There's plenty to learn about this COVID circumstances that we're experiencing, the new wave and the disruption that that's causing in the city with businesses, schools, public meetings, some attitudinal issues with the public as well. Even I get upset once in a while. Let's do our best, I say to the public, and I say that to myself as well. Try and think before I speak, and hopefully, we can all come together and do what's right and best for the city, and try and move ourselves and the constituents along, and we'll get through this, but it won't happen overnight. And so I say, let's cooperate, let's work together, let's follow our motto, and let's get great things done as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Garcia.
Nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. Councilman Estrada.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone, my colleagues, city staff, and public. I wanted, as Steve said, just to show a moment of appreciation for MLK Day. Hopefully, people went out to volunteer and definitely do stuff in his memory and his honor. And other than that, I just have one announcement, Mayor, and that is I wanted to just let the community of Watsonville know that I will not be seeking re-election in 2022. This is a decision that I've thought of for a long time, and as much as I've always wanted to do this and to serve here, I recently became a father, and years of not knowing if that would happen because of my type 1 diabetes, made it difficult to plan for a family. But I was blessed to have Catalina in my life, and it has just completely changed my world. So my wife and my family have supported me for the last 4 years, and I think I need to prioritize them, and I need to be a full-time father. It's tough to be a full-time employee, a full-time public servant, and so something sort of had to give as well. And so it pains me, and it makes me sad that I've made this decision. But I wanted to let the people know, the people of District 4 know that we'll leave you in good hands. I will work with whoever takes my place. We'll make sure that D4 is not forgotten and that everything, all the things that need to be taken care of are taken care of, and we'll have a warm handoff. And so I just want to just thank everyone, my colleagues, staff, community, for this wild ride. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Estrada. Councilman Mayor Pro Tem Montesino.
Good evening, everyone. I have nothing to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Vanessa Quiroz Carter.
Thank you, Mayor. In echoing Councilman Hurst's sentiments, I would also like to remind us all to maintain social distancing, continue to wash our hands, continue to sanitize our hands, receive and vote vaccinations, and to all do our part, continue to do our part in fighting COVID-19. I would also like to say that I celebrated MLK Junior Day on Saturday. As a community member. I visited the Resource Center for Nonviolence, and I heard many lovely speeches. And it was just a really wonderful celebration. It was the youth day, so I spent some time with the youth, and it was really wonderful to see the youth out promoting that dream and that vision. I also just wanted to remind folks, if you haven't done so already, to visit covidtest.gov, and you are able to apply to receive 4 COVID tests for free. I've already done so for my household. It's completely 100% free. It's very, very quick. It took me about 2 minutes to fill out the information, 100% free. So if you haven't already done so, please go ahead and do that to help keep you and your family safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Dutra.
Thank you. I too have nothing to report, but I would like to say thank you, Councilmember Estrada. I love you. You are a dear friend. You are the type of leader that we really we deserve in this community. And you know, you're kind and thoughtful and are always trying to find a balance. You will definitely be missed. And thank you for your 4 years of service. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. You know what? Councilman Estrada, I want to echo Councilman Dutra's words. The one thing that I really appreciate about you is your balance. And I know that's been difficult for you because, you know, as we all learn, it's difficult for anybody, but in this position, we hear from voices everywhere. And we really do have to balance what we do for our city, what we do for our district. And you know what you do? You help to balance us as a council. And I continue to appreciate that. And I will continue to enjoy and to take note of that as we work through this year. And I sure am glad you're on council while I'm mayor. And I thank you very much. And other than echoing the fact that MLK Day was a day to celebrate, you know, who we are, who we still want to be. And as a teacher, you know, teaching about it all last week and this week, it's important to recognize that thinking of others who are less fortunate in whatever way we deem it societally is an important thing to do because we take lessons on that. What can we do? How can we solve these issues? Some of them will not be solved by that thought, but the mere thought that and the mere spoken words that we have in our conversations will lead us to better things. So thank you. And as we move on, we're going to be moving on to our consent agenda. All items appearing on the consent agenda are recommended actions, which are considered to be routine and will be acted upon as one consensus motion. Any items removed will be considered immediately after the consensus motion. The mayor will allow public input prior to the approval of the consent agenda. So at this time, do we have anybody who would like to speak to what's on our consent agenda, which is I don't know if I need to read it. It's there. A support for SB 418 from Senator Laird, for Paro Valley Healthcare District to address closure of the Watsonville Community Hospital.
I don't see anyone wanting to
Okay.
speak.
All right, I'll take comments then, or clarifications from the city council. Seeing, oh, I'm sorry, Councilman, Mayor Pro Tem Montesino.
I don't have any comments or question. I just want to approve this, the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Are there any other points of discussion? Councilman Hurst?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, John Laird's been a friend of ours for many, many years. And as everybody knows, and it's especially concerning these days, health and all policies and health in general, and our health delivery services are so important, particularly for senior citizens, but not just senior citizens, they're important for everyone. So it's really important that we succeed with this venture of keeping our local hospital afloat, alive, vibrant, getting better all the time. It's an issue that's, you know, right in front of us today, but it's a national issue as well. And so I think the time has come for us to look at health in a much larger perspective and find a way that we can make sure there's equitable health coverage and that no one is left behind health-wise. And so I think this is an important statement, request, action on the senator's part, and we're anxious to receive his support and try and move forward with our local health care, and let's don't forget the national health care as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Are there any other comments? Oh, Councilwoman Garcia.
Yes, last night I had an opportunity to participate in an interview with Senator Laird, and he mentioned the importance of this bill and congratulated actually all the participants that are going to work together to make this happen. So it was good to hear that he's really advocating for this bill.
Thank you. Any other comments from the council? Okay, let's move the question.
Dutra,
Aye.
Estrada,
Aye.
Garcia,
Yes,
Hurst,
Aye.
Montesino,
Yes.
Quiroz Carter, Parker.
Yes,
The motion carries.
thank you. Okay, we move into our public hearing portion of our meeting tonight. The public hearing to consider a redistricting plan. And I'm going to turn this over to Special Counsel Willis and Demographer Wagaman at this time. Are they on board? I see
Yes,
some
they are.
names and now I see faces. Good, there we go.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and you see my name, my face, and I will wave to you. A few of you I saw at meetings of the committee. I'm going to go ahead and turn off that video. However, I'm not hiding. I just want to go and switch straight over to the share screen so I can show you the presentation and get this conversation going. And hopefully everyone is now seeing that PowerPoint and the logo of the committee. And it went all the way to the end, of course. Try that again. So as a reminder, what we're doing today is a couple of things. One, familiarize the council with the redistricting concepts so that you can evaluate the work of the committee and the plans that were recommended, have the opportunity to then be able to evaluate any public input you received this evening, look at those plans, including their recommendation, and then you will have the opportunity to either select the recommended plan, select another plan, or if we need to, we can actually make changes live during the course of this meeting and actually move blocks around if we need to, if something is close but not quite there. First, before we do that, just what is redistricting? As you all know and have talked about, members of this body are elected from districts, and population moves over time. And that's why we do a census every 10 years. And redistricting really at the end of the day is just the act of redrawing lines to reflect those changes in population. And it is a process that matters because it affects how people are represented for the next 10 years. And as I noted, the primary driver of this is new data. We also do have some new rules. They're including some new rules that came from our friends in Sacramento, as you were just talking about legislation that did have some impacts on the process. And also it's just a chance for public input for people to say what's working and what isn't. As you see, the committee had an extensive meeting process. They had 6 hearings over the course of September through December, and they actually added some additional meetings over the course of that process in order to allow for robust public participation. That process led to a series of plans. They started by looking at the existing district boundaries, created 3 initial plans, along with 2 plans that were submitted by members of the public. That led to then a creation of 3 revised plans. And finally, they settled on a plan known as the Rivera Plan, which is named after one of the members of that body. On the screen, you now currently see a comparison of the current boundaries and the Rivera Plan. And what you'll notice right off is that they are very similar. It is not a significant change to the current lines. And I'm actually going to switch over to the interactive software here so you can see, and I can highlight exactly where those changes are. So nobody has to guess exactly what moved. I'll show you those now. And now you're seeing, hopefully, a different map of the city and some different, this interactive software, which we'll be using for any changes you may want to consider this evening. And the black lines you're seeing on the screen right now are actually the current boundaries. And then you see the light green lines are the census blocks. That's the geography we get from the federal government and what we have to work with in this process. And on the screen, you'll actually see 3 areas highlighted in red, blue, and purple. And what those are is those are actually census blocks. Those are, again, they're building blocks. And unfortunately, in 3 areas in the city, the geography that we got from the federal government doesn't conform to your current district boundaries. So what you're seeing there, for example, in this red area, is these are actually 2 census blocks that are divided by the district boundary. In those areas where those census blocks do not conform to the existing district boundaries, the committee and you would have to make changes. Those are not kind of optional. That's something that has to be done. Now, the good news is that in this red area, if you look, this is basically following the freeway. So that's not impacting any people. In this blue area, there's this area here. Again, that's the FedEx Center. So that's not impacting any people. So it's a change, but it doesn't affect any actual residents of the city. The one area that there is a change that does impact residents is in this purple block, which is divided, and there are houses on either side of that line. So that is one area that the committee did have to confront, changes that were basically thrust upon us by our friends in Washington. I'm going to now take and hide those blocks and overlay the Rivera Plan for a moment with those current boundaries, and you'll see 6 places where there were changes. One is that, again, that area where we talked about that there were changes forced by that affected no people along the freeway. The second, again, affected no people in this FedEx Center. And the third was this change to shift this area from District 2 into District 6. Again, that was a place where changes had to be made that was triggered by that federal geography. In addition, there were 3 other changes that the commission made. And I'll talk about those a little bit more later on, but the first was here to conform the boundary between districts 3 and 4 and follow it along Green Valley Road in the 152, which changes names along its length to move that area. The second was to shift 2 blocks from District 6 into District 7. This is just beyond Vermont Street. And then finally to shift 2 blocks along Main Street into District 2 from District 1, just north of Beach Street. So those are the 6 changes in the Rivera Plan. So that's what it does to the existing lines. Before I move back to the main presentation, I do just want to again note, we have the ability to make changes to that plan if there are any requested. We do also have all of the other plans that were created available. So if there's a desire to look at any of those at the end of the presentation, please just do let me know. But before we do that, I'm just going to switch again back to the PowerPoint and walk you through some of those redistricting criteria and the rest of the process. So you know what's being asked of you, which is we're already through 6 hearings and we have 2 more on the schedule. This one is to again look at those recommendations, make any final changes, and select the final plan that then would be brought forward for adoption on February the 8th. As you're looking at plans and evaluating plans, you want to look at the criteria. These are the rules that govern the process that are listed on the screen. I'll walk through each of those. I'll try to do it expeditiously. If there's a desire to go back to any of them, please do let me know. Equal population is a concept that's pretty easy to understand. This is usually referred to as one person, one vote. The important thing to note here is, one, we are talking about people. We're not talking about citizens. We're not talking about registered voters. We are talking about people as counted by the US Census. And when we say equal, we're not talking about districts of exactly the same size. There is generally a idea that you want districts to be, the difference between your biggest district and your smallest district to be 10%. So that isn't plus or minus 10. Think of that as more like plus or minus 5. I will note for the committee, one of their goals in the Rivera plan was to try to reduce some of the deviations in the existing boundaries, and also to try to leave the districts in districts 1 and 2 slightly smaller than some of the other districts, to reflect that those are areas that had higher hard to count populations and where there was a greater concern that there might have been people missed by the census given all of the challenges of that process. So if you look at those existing boundaries right now, when I talked about total deviation, you'll notice District 2 is at minus 5.7 and 4 was at 4.3. So that is exactly 10%. So right at that upper marker, the Rivera plan basically cuts that in half and cuts that total deviation down to 5.4%. So that was one of the goals they attempted to accomplish. Federal law is heavily focused on issues of race and ethnicity. One thing to emphasize is that race cannot be the predominant factor in drawing the lines. It's something that can be considered along with traditional race neutral criteria, and we'll talk about what that means in a moment. The other thing about federal laws, and it's a little counterintuitive, in the same way that race cannot be the predominant factor, in some places, federal law explicitly requires you to look at race and ethnicity, particularly to comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act. There's a series of tests that look at whether the Federal Voting Rights Act applies. I won't belabor those because I'll note under the demographics of Watsonville, which as you all know is an extremely diverse city, all of your existing districts and all of the plans under that were considered by the commission, whether those selected or the Rivera plan, all drew districts where Latinos made up a majority of the what's called the citizen voting age population in all those districts. So Federal Voting Rights Act issues is something that was looked at, but really didn't drive the process. Contiguity is a pretty easy concept, which is that all the parts of a district need to touch all the other parts of the district. There's a little caveat, and it comes up in Watsonville, which is you have some parts of Watsonville that don't touch the other parts of Watsonville. And so those still need to be assigned to a district. And so that is one place where there's an exception. Only one of those non-contiguous areas actually has any population, however. The next concept is communities of interest. This is basically who are the people who should go together for purposes of fair representation. And that's a pretty amorphous concept. And it's one of the reasons why people ask, like, why don't you just draw the districts as squares? Because people don't live in squares, right? That's not the way the human experience works. And very nice, neat, tidy square districts may not look good if they end up splitting a community and splitting up a group of people who otherwise would have an opportunity to have a voice and have an opportunity to elect. Now, the important thing about communities of interest is to keep in mind that those can be defined very broadly. The law is pretty open as to how those can be defined. And there's not an existing database of all the communities of interest in Watsonville. You can look at existing data sets like city planning information, but this is a place that the committee spent a lot of time is talking about what are those communities, weighing trade-offs of one community versus another, because it is one of those places where you can't just look them up and check if every community is being kept whole or not. Compactness is basically the idea that looking at a district and does it make sense? Does it look like it has a weird shape? And where it does have a shape that isn't highly compact, is there a reason why? So as we just discussed, you may not want districts to all be squares because you want to keep your communities of interest whole, but you generally also want to not have districts that look really kind of have crazy shapes to them, because that's where that evil gerrymander word usually starts to come up. Now, that said, there are, again, reasons why you may not want to draw those. Some of those are dealing with geography. And we know Mother Nature doesn't build life in squares either, right? Roads, mountains, rivers have, squiggly shapes to them. Man-made features, whether you're talking about roads or freeways, often, again, do not fall into nice, neat squares. So at the end of the day, when you talk about geography, one of the ways to think about it is once you're done, once you select a plan this evening, can you go up to somebody on the street and be able to describe the boundaries of a district and have them know what you're talking about? And that's kind of one of the ways to think about that. And again, I referenced gerrymandering. If you didn't know, the cartoon on the right is from 1812 from a district in Massachusetts. And that's where the term comes from, is from that cartoon. And there is a prohibition in the law that districts cannot be drawn to favor or discriminate against a political party. Almost done. What you see on the screen is the census geography. Census geography is made up of a series of nesting Russian dolls where census blocks add up to block groups, add up to tracts. The important thing for you to know, however, is those census blocks can't be split as a general rule. So you cannot, these are Lego pieces and you can't saw a Lego piece in half. So if you wanted a district boundary to run between where there's not a green line, that's probably going to be a problem. So these green lines and the red and blue lines are kind of the markers we have to work with, and those that the committee had to work with as well. Before I turn things back over to the council for public comment and questions, I will note that the dedicated website was set up for this process. Multiple tools were on that website to encourage public participation, whether it is to submit communities of interest, submit your own redistricting plans, encourage comment on those redistricting plans. And that web page under one of those new laws is now actually required to be kept on the website for 10 years. And the reason for that is that if in 2026, somebody says, why does the district boundary go down X? They would be able to go back and see how these district boundaries came in place. So this process will outlive what we finished this evening. And with that, for Mayor Parker, again, I do have that interactive software available. If there is debate and discussion, I can have that up during the debate and be able to show whatever anyone wants to see, or I can have it down so you can all see each other more effectively. So just please let me know how best I can help facilitate your debate and discussion. With that,
Okay.
I'll stop talking.
Thank you very much. And I don't know, we may want your screen back up there so that you can share, but I'm going to move to council right now. We'll have any clarifying or technical questions that you would like to speak. Councilwoman Garcia, let's start with you.
Yes, actually, I have 3 questions. One, my understanding is that the Rivera map took residents from District 2 and added it to District 6. And I'm just wondering, in the list that you gave us for developing districts, which of those criteria that suggestion of moving District 2 residents to District 6, where does that fit?
Sure. And yes, that was one of the 6 changes. And actually, again, the triggering event for that was in part that census geography issue, where there's a census block that was fixed, split, and that had to be looked at and balanced, because the reason you can't split a census block is the way the census reports information is they don't tell you where each individual person lives. They will take a census block and say, in this census block, there are 252 people, but they don't tell you where they live within that census block. And if our first criteria is drawing districts of equal size, you have to be able to, you can't split those in half and kind of guess. So that's what triggered that particular change. That was one of the points of discussion, is in resolving that, is whether to balance that population by shifting that area from district that was split and putting it in 2 or putting it in 6, knowing they had to put it in one or the other. They ultimately decided to put it in 6. I think there was discussion, as I recall, and if there are any committee members listening, please feel free to correct me during public comment. There was a discussion about both that made more sense from their perspective from a community of interest standpoint, and also from using the geography in that area, because the street that they ended up using, which is California Street, was already being used as a district boundary for another district. So it's kind of continuing to use that for a second district.
Okay, thank you. My next question, I know it's not on your list, but I would like to know for the districts that being proposed, the map that was proposed, I'd like to know what the voter registration is for each district. So it's just a side information that I would like. How many voters do we have registered in each of the districts in the map being proposed? And finally, at this time, I'd like to say for a future meeting, or maybe this meeting, I'd like us to also look at the blue map that you had drawn, because in terms of community of interest, the blue map actually unified 2 sides of a street, the Clifford apartments. The Clifford apartments currently are split between District 4 and District 5. And so whenever there's any issues that arise in that apartment complex, it takes 2 city council members to come together to address whatever issues they have. And so in community of interest, I know the blue map put both sides of the Clifford apartments together. So is it possible that at a future meeting, we could have look at that blue map?
So 2 parts to both of those. One is I can provide you registration information, and I can do that now, noting that that information is based on the voter file as of the 2020 general election. That's the most current information we have from the state.
Okay.
So I can rattle off those numbers if the mayor would like.
Absolutely.
So I'll rattle these off in order. Again, noting this was not something that was considered by the body and is not, again, a criterion. For District 1, it was 2,392, 2392. For District 2, it's 2,322, that's 2322. For District 3, it was 3,538, that's 3538. For District 4, it was 3,308, 3308. For District 5, it was 2,300, or I apologize, 2,724, that's 2724. For District 6, it's 3,480, again, that's 3480. And for District 7, it was 4,093, that's 4093. As for the blue plan, the intent of the schedule this evening is actually to, if the council is so inclined, to select a plan this evening. So if there is a desire to look at alternative plans, I would suggest, it's your process, that we may want to look at those this evening. I would defer to the council and the mayor if you want to do that first kind of pass through the full body and see if there are any other plans folks want to look at, or if you want me to go ahead and present that plan now.
I think that's a good notion. So the blue plan, Councilwoman Garcia would like to look at it. And so are there any other plans that anybody else would like him to pull up? Otherwise, we'll just stick with the blue plan to look at. Councilman Estrada?
Yes, I was hoping that have a discussion on the Rodriguez map.
Okay, so the blue plan and the Rodriguez plan. Okay, are there any other ones? Councilwoman Quiroz Carter,
Yes, I'd like to see the green plan, please.
green plan. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, good. So we have those three plans, Mr. Wagaman, the blue plan, the Rodriguez plan, and the green plan.
I will walk through each of those. I'm just looking at them really quickly to familiarize myself and just figure out a good order. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my share screen for those three plans. And again, we're going to start here with the existing boundaries as you see. And I'm going to start actually with the green plan because the green plan actually is closest to the Rivera plan. And then the blue plan and the Rodriguez plans have a lot of similarities to each other. And what you see here is if you look at the Rivera or the green plan, 5 of the 6 changes are identical to the Rivera plan. You see the change on the freeway, the change along Green Valley, the change with the FedEx Center, the 2 blocks along Main Street, the 2 blocks north of or to the west of Vermont. The only area that's different is again this area right here. And again, this is where we had that split block, if you recall. And so and that's that area highlighted in purple. And where the Rivera plan shifted this area into District 6, the green plan shifts it and keeps it in District 2. And so that really is the difference between the two. And that's not by mistake in that the Rivera plan was in fact one of the updates and modifications that was made to the green plan, which was an earlier plan. So that is the green plan. The blue plan, and I'm going to turn off those and turn back on again those existing district boundaries.
Do you mind, Mr. Megan? I'm going to ask the council, do you have any other questions about the green plan and clarifications? Just so we had the map there. And I'm looking because we don't have, hang on, I'm going to look at all of our screen. I don't see everybody. Okay, I don't, Councilman Hurst.
Yes, the purple or the orange colored part that is nearest Rampart Road in the far left-hand corner, it was orange a minute ago, is by the freeway near Larkin Valley and Airport. There's a little triangle there that if there, you can see it now, it's that orange triangle. No one lives there, but there are businesses there, and they are probably more connected to the airport corridor and the airport itself than District 4 or the Ohlone Parkway FedEx area. And so, you know, it's not a big deal to me by any means because there's really no voters in there, but I think it might confuse some of the business operators that are there at Superior Foods, and I'm not sure if it incorporates the Westgate Business Park or not, but it's right there at the freeway entrance, and maybe it's kind of inconsequential, but I wanted to know why it was attached to District 4 rather than the contiguous District 3.
So again, if you look at these red highlighted blocks, and this is in both in multiple plans, you see this configuration. This highlighted red area kind of has to go in one or the other. And if you look at the area that is kind of past the black line here, the only structure that is moved is this, and I don't know what it is, I'll be honest, that is kind of within the ramp on Westgate Airport and the 152. So that's the only physical structure that's being moved there. As you said, it's a zero population area. So if there was a direction to shift those blocks and assign those to the other district, you could do that. The only note is because this block goes down here, you would also have to move this area because otherwise it would be non-contiguous. So that is a direction that could be given this evening for revision to really any of the plans if so desired.
No, that would not be my desire to have that come apart. I just think that, you know, the business operators there have not expressed an opinion one way or another. And so with that, I think we can accept that and leave it alone with the explanation that was provided. I just wanted to make sure we had the explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Hurst. So this is the green plan. Councilwoman Quiroz Carter.
Thank you, Mayor Parker. So I had a question, Michael, about the green plan. So if I'm understanding correctly, it's the same as the Rivera plan, except for that one little, I call it the little tail on the fish there. Is that including the piece on Main Street? So it did add the piece on Main Street, but it does not add the little piece on the tail of the fish. Is that correct?
Correct. So I'm going to overlap the green plan and the Rivera plan. Whoops, that's the Rodriguez plan. The Rivera plan, and you'll see they are identical except for this one area.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay, so except for the little fin on the fish. And is there any particular reason for that? Or I'm just trying to understand the thinking behind that.
So again, this was a place that there was discussion, and the issue was that this kind of area has to move either into 6 or into 2 because of that weird split census block. And so there was a discussion about which one, and ultimately the committee's determination was that they preferred it in District 6. Again, I don't want to speak for them. There was discussions on communities of interest and also on using those understandable boundaries. But that is where, you know, the council, again, as discussed in the last issue, you know, can provide its direction on, you know, what it would want to do that issue if this is an architecture that you wanted to pursue.
Mr. Wagman, could you, oh, I'm sorry. Councilwoman, are you done?
Yes, that was it. Thank you for that
Okay.
clarification.
Good. Mr. Wagman, could you make that bigger so we can actually see the streets that are involved in that one little teeny fin thing?
Yep.
There?
And let me put up, this may help you see this a little bit better. So that's a Google HiRid map. So you can see the area here. So that is Tuttle, Hill, California, Brewington, and I think Cerrito. That's basically the bounds of this area that's impacted.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are there any other questions, clarifying questions on green for Mr. Wagman? Okay, then we'll move on to another color or to the Rodriguez plan.
So I will do the blue plan and then the Rodriguez plan. They have a lot of similarities to each other because they both start with the same central kind of triggering event, for lack of a better term. And that is, again, restoring to your 2010 geography. There's a series of apartments called off of Clifford, and I believe they're called the Clifford Apartments. It's been a little while. Councilmember Garcia can correct me, and that they are actually on either side of the street, that particular complex. And the question was, could those folks be reunited as a community of interest in a single district? And that was something the committee was sympathetic to and asked me to look at. This is an issue where, again, our federal friends were less than helpful in that I'm going to highlight 2 census blocks, and these are the 2 census blocks that take up that community. And there's the first one, which you can see here, which is currently in district, I believe that's District 5. Actually, I'm going to do this with the color on so I can see a little bit better. In District 5, and then the part that is not in District 5 is in just across the street, which may seem like a small little grab, except that's the census block that covers that area. So in order to unite those apartments, it's not, or it's not just one, it's actually condominiums, I believe. It's not, you can't just grab them. You have to grab this entire area highlighted in red. And really, it's also including these areas that are completely surrounded. So it forces a larger change to the map. And that's what was explored under the blue plan. And I'm going to unhighlight those. And now I'm going to put up the blue plan. And you can see a much more significant change, right? So you're seeing this shift that is to deal with the apartments and kind of smooth out that line. And then you see a series of additional changes because that then pushes a lot of population because you've taken a large chunk of population out of District 4. So District 4 now needs to make up for population. So what you see is District 4, I'm going to try to hopefully make this a little clearer. District 4 then has to make up for that population a little bit by moving into some areas on Clifford, but in part by also going over Ohlone and grabbing this area as well. There was some community of interest discussion about that potentially being desirable because that was the one district that did not have a elementary school and the one elementary school was there. And then it caused then some population to shift where District 1 moves into District 2 and District 2 moves into District 3. So you can kind of think of this as a big circle, right? 5 moves into 4, 4 moves into 1, 1 moves into 2, 2 moves into 5. And that's called a ripple. And what you end up with is the blue plan. And you can see, again, District 6, 7, and 3 are not really significantly changed here, but there are significant changes to 1, 2, 5, and 4 in order to address that particular issue, which one of the things we did discuss as the committee and for staff has noted is there's actually a federal program called the Block Boundary Suggestion Project, where cities are able to make suggestions to the federal government on how they draw those census blocks. And so that was identified as whatever plan is adopted, someplace that having more rational census blocks in a few of these areas might have given both the committee and you a little bit more flexibility. The Rodriguez plan, and I'm going to overlay it to the blue plan here, again, is trying to address some of those same issues, but does it in a slightly different way. And again, you're seeing a slightly larger area shifted into District 4 or into District 5 into District 4. You're now seeing a larger area shifted from 5 into 4. So kind of a two-way swap between those districts is more significant. And then you see again, some of those same kind of changes where District 1 is pushed into District 2 and District 2 is pushed into District 5 to make up for this area that's being taken out of District 1 and given to District 4. So that same kind of circle going on, just in a different way. So they were both addressing those kinds of issues. To note, Rodriguez refers to another one of those committee members, and this was one of the early public plans. So, and this was one of those ones discussed and is again available for your consideration. If there are questions on either of those, I'm happy to answer them.
Councilwoman Garcia.
Yes, for either district, for the blue plan or the Rodriguez plan, what does it do to that part that was in the Rivera plan shifted from District 2 to District 6? Does it do anything for that?
So this is the Rodriguez plan, and you'll see that area that we were discussing is out now under the Rodriguez plan is shifted into District 7.
Oh.
Whoops, I didn't mean to click that. You can see it's actually, there's these more significant changes, which I failed to highlight, where there's some changes between District 6 and 7. This is not part of the blue plan, is a feature of the Rodriguez plan. Under the blue plan, that area is currently left in District 6. So it makes the same decision on that area that was made under the Rivera plan. Again, that's an area you could look at making changes. Well, anywhere you could look at making changes, but it is currently under the blue plan under District 6.
Okay, any other questions? in regards to these, Councilman Estrada?
Thank you, Mayor. My question was, I have a couple questions, but for the first one is, what was the major sort of criticism of this map?
So again, I don't want to speak for members of the committee, and if they're in, they can speak for themselves during public comment.
From what you heard.
Yeah, from what I heard, as accurately as I can reflect it, is there was a discussion about whether the current lines were working effectively and providing good representation for folks. And this plan triggered more significant changes to those boundaries. And ultimately, the body determined that they wanted to stick to a plan that was closer to those current boundaries while lowering deviations to get them a little closer to being in balance. Again, leaving districts 1 and 2 a little underpopulated to reflect those potential issues with the census while correcting those issues with the census geography that were highlighted. So I think the criticism, if there was one, was just that this triggered in addressing a very specific issue, which they all had, I think, sympathy for from everyone I heard, in what the impacts of correcting that had on other parts of the map.
Okay. And I know that we talk about community of interest. Council member Garcia had also talked about the issues over at Clifford Manor Apartments, but you know, so the thing that I sort of appreciate about this map is just really the fact that you know, Ohlone, for example, it's kind of an odd thing that they're separated. But that I sort of feel like the community of interest is the housing, the road that goes right in the middle of it, Ohlone Parkway, the sloughs, people's children go to Landmark. I'm sort of wondering why split that up? If we're trying to avoid splitting or dividing communities of interest, then why have that sort of significant division? Same with Clifford Manor Apartment, just like Ohlone Parkway, it's one of the arteries in the city of Watsonville. People living on both sides of the street, they have the same issues. You know, the majority of the families know each other. They go to their children go to the same schools. They go to maybe the same areas. I guess my question is, if one of the goals was to really keep communities of interest together, then why have these sort of glaring divisions? But just really just to really not just to keep things more status quo more than anything, or?
So what I would say is that redistricting involves trade-offs, right? And so addressing one issue may cause an issue for somewhere else. And that was what the committee is looking at and what you're looking at this evening. And weighing those trade-offs is, you know, one of the things you'll need to do this evening. I would suggest if there are other clarifying or technical questions, I'm happy to answer those, or things that you need to see in the maps, wanting to make sure you provide that opportunity for the public to weigh in those kinds of issues. And then that's exactly the debate and discussion that I would assume you would have after closing the public hearing.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Wagman. Appreciate your thoughts on this. Those are my questions, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other clarifying questions? The only thing I look at, oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Mayor Pro Tem Montesino, did you have a question or?
Well, I don't merely have a question, but I just, you know, just a comment, because just to answer Councilmember Estrada, it used to be, Ohlone used to be together, because, you know, in the 2000s, that was our growth area. But in 2010, you know, there was trade-offs, because it was District 4 was the biggest district with the biggest population. So that was a trade-off in 2010. I mean, Rebecca could probably tell us more, because she was at the committee that did it, you know, and we just kind of blessed it. So, you know, like I said, there was big discussions back then in this regard, but I couldn't tell you. I actually don't remember. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
I just wanted
Okay,
to add,
so,
oh,
I'm sorry.
no, I just wanted to
Councilwoman
add to,
Garcia.
yeah, I just wanted to add to what Eduardo said in terms of what he mentioned in 2010, the decision, there was actually 3 maps that were submitted to the council with 1 recommendation from the steering committee or the subcommittee. But the one that was adopted actually came from the recommendation from the lawsuit attorney from Joaquin Avila, who had won the lawsuit for us, and he worked with a demographer. And so it was his plan based on what he thought the data that he had reflected best for all the districts. Why that split, though, between the Clifford apartments was approved, I don't remember either. But but yeah, there was a lot of discussion in terms of District 4 being the largest district then and having to split off. But on that note, I wanted to say that I appreciate the blue map and the Rodriguez map, because both of them add a school to District 4. And right now, District 4 doesn't have any schools. And it would be good to have a school in each of our districts. And so those are my final comments.
Thank you. You know, I'm the one that's remiss on this. This is a clarifying and technical question time period. And although we've had some excellent history on it, I appreciate that. I'm the one, I'm sorry I didn't clarify that as we went along. And so I do want to ask a clarifying question. And the clarifying question would be, how does it change for the Rodriguez plan? How does it change the deviations, the numbers? Because I know that was something, what was it? Plus or minus 5%. So you're looking at a spread of 10, right?
So yes, you're looking at that total deviation, which is that difference between the largest and the smallest district. Under the Rodriguez plan, the total deviation is 7.4%. So it's bringing it down from the 10% under the current lines down to 7.4. It's still higher than the Rivera plan, which was at 5.4. So it's kind of somewhere in between the two.
Okay, and what about the blue plan?
The blue plan is at 6.9%. So all kind of in the same range, all are within legally acceptable standards.
So that's interesting. Okay, so they were seeking balance in different ways, I see. Okay, so we're gonna move then, if we don't have any other clarifying questions. As I see myself raise the hand and I look, who's that? To the public hearing. And do we have any members of the public who would like to ask or make comments at this time? Is that correct? I want to clarify that. We are making, is the public going to be, the public's questions going to be answered, or are they making comments? Can I get some clarification on that? Okay, then I'm going to say the public hearing, these are comments by the public, and if going to be answered, it will be answered later by staff. And we'll move from there. So do we have any speakers?
Yes, Steve, go ahead.
Welcome, Steve.
Well, as a former U.S. government teacher and someone who has also been interested in the redistricting of my District 7 for the Cabrillo Board of Trustees, I want to point out to everybody that in case you don't remember the previous occupant of the White House, he did everything he could to make sure that only quote unquote pure Americans, those who were born and raised here, would be counted. He worked very, very hard to get anybody that he did not think fit that category not counted. In other words, folks, we had a racist in the White House. Many did not get counted. I know that for a fact. I went door to door winning my seat in 2020, and many were not counted. And I even went out to make sure that when I campaigned for myself, I asked them, did you fill out the census form? So one reason we need to keep the status quo, pretty much districts as they are, with a few exceptions noted, particularly by Councilwoman Garcia, is that 10 years from now, there will not be a Trump in office, and hopefully not a Republican. And so the president in office will address the fact that we need to count everybody, whether they live in a trailer or a 5-story mansion or a mobile home, or they live in a condominium, whether they live with other people or by themselves. Everybody needs to be counted. It's in the Constitution, folks, and we need to follow the Constitution. So I would also ask you to send a message to Senators Sinema and Senator Manchin to let them know how disappointed you are in the fact that they don't believe in the John Lewis the John Lewis Act and voting rights for everyone that Martin Luther King championed during his whole life. Remember,
Thank you,
this is
Steve.
still Martin Luther King's birthday week. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, continuing to our next speaker.
Daniel, go ahead.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Hello, my name is Daniel Dodge Sr. I live in District, currently which is District 5. I was the chair of the redistricting committee. I just wanted to add a few, to mention a few things really quickly. First of all, I'd like to thank all the members of the committee that that attended all the meetings that we had. And we had a variety of discussions, and we looked at a variety of different factors before making a recommendation of the Rivera plan to this council. We looked at community of interest, but first of all, we really had discussions pertaining to the possible undercounts in the city. The city did a remarkable effort of gathering and the nonprofit community. Everybody was on board for the census efforts 10 years ago. Due to the pandemic, due to the efforts of the federal government hampering us. We started late because we weren't even able to get census information. We started about a month behind schedule, or the data arrived about a month behind schedule. Mr. Wagaman can confirm that if I have my dates wrong. We didn't look at incumbency. Voter registration is not a requirement for districts with a high Latino population that we have in this community, and citizenship and rates and under 18 rates. The voter data, we looked at what was required, and that's total populations, and the districts are balanced population wise. We also looked at community of interest. There was that the census change that was made into, I think Vanessa called it the tail, in the tail area. That was a census block that was split. That after a variety of discussion, it needed to go into a different district, and we looked at, due to the undercount, we felt that those undercounts probably would be in the greater areas of possibly of districts 1 and districts 2. So we as a committee, and I don't know if there's anybody else on, we looked at keeping things closest to status quo, possibly.
Daniel?
Yes.
I'm just saying we ran out of time, but I do want to have
Okay, I'm
everyone
sorry, I can't
understand
see
from
the
the public that you were the chair of the committee in clarifying that for
Yes,
the
correct.
public. Yes.
Correct.
So I thank
correct.
you.
So-
Do you have anything, last comment to add?
Oh, thank you for all gathering together in a special meeting on a Thursday night. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have another speaker?
Yes, Crystal, go ahead.
Hi,
Crystal, go ahead. Very
my
good.
name is Crystal Salcido. I just wanted first to thank the City Council for reviewing all of our maps. I was also on the redistricting committee. We based our primary data on the census. And I echo Trustee Trujillo's concerns that our main data point was with the US Census taken at a time where there was a federal government that was hostile to several members of our community. And so we were really concerned with making major shifts based off of data that we had real concerns about. Not only did we have issues in our federal government, but we also had a pandemic. So we had to base the majority of our opinions on census. It's not voter registration data, it's census. And one of the main criteria, we used all of the legal criteria. They were reiterated to us at every single meeting what the main criteria are going to be. We wanted equitable districts in terms of population, the most equitable possible. So we reduced the size of District 4, we reduced the sizes of District 6 so that they were more equitable in terms of population balance. But ultimately, we were very sympathetic to the issues in Clifford Manor. One of the suggestions from, I believe it was our census expert who you just heard from, was to talk to the federal government about changing that actual census block, which we can do. We can petition to fix the census block so it's not a huge move. It's not, moving 800 people just to reunite the Clifford Manor apartments. So that was a suggestion we had for future meetings to fix that particular issue. And ultimately, we decided for small changes based off of the data that we had. And I just wanted to thank you for your time and especially thank Councilman Paco Estrada for your service. I live in District 4 and I appreciate your service and you've been a real gift to the community.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. And we're moving on to, do we have any other speakers?
Yes, Ellie, go ahead, please.
Welcome, Ellie.
Hi, I'd like to once again thank y'all for having these meetings online. It promotes accessibility and allows people to show up like myself, who I would not have been able to show up in person. One of my big issues with the redistricting committee meetings was that in itself, some of them were online and some of them were in person. So as much as I would like to attend these meetings so that I know what it is that we're talking about and I can give an educated opinion, it was hard for me to be able to attend the meetings in person. So like I've advocated before and I'd advocate again, it would be very beneficial for community to be able to attend these type of meetings virtually. And it would allow us to be more educated on these things. It is concerning to me breaking up Clifford Manor. And just in general gerrymandering, right? I know that we have issues with the Santa Cruz County trying to break us up as well. So yeah, that's basically my opinion on it. I feel like if we can have these important meetings all online, it would promote accessibility and allow us to better understand what it is that's happening, because I did attend some of the redistricting meetings and it's just a lot of information. So if we could have a little bit more time to digest it and understand it, then we could have a better opinion on it, right? But again, I'd like to thank City Council for having today's meeting online because Omicron is destroying our community. The numbers are terrifying. And I look forward to more meetings online to keep us safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was under the impression that all of our, but the staff can get that later, that they were all online.
Yes, they were.
Okay, because I was attending one and I knew I saw it online. So do we have any other speakers at this time?
I don't see anyone else.
Okay, so then we're going to bring it back to council for any appropriate motions, if the council so wishes. I'd like to recognize Councilman Montesino. Oh, Mayor Pro Tem Montesino. I'm going to do that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna put a motion to adopt the Riviera plan. I mean, it's the most balanced in my view, and because of the undertone in my district, I'll tell you just in just my district, and not only in the downtown area. I could tell you in some of the in the neighborhood where I live, there's 3 families to a household sometimes, and there weren't.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, if you don't mind,
Okay.
you made a motion. I'll come back to you
Yeah.
for comment.
Okay.
You made a motion, and do we have a second?
I'm glad to second that.
Okay, so we have actually 2 people. I don't know who got in there first, so I'll let Madam Clerk. differentiate. So that was Councilman Hurst and Councilman Dutra. And so since we have a motion and a second, I'm going to go back to you, Mayor Pro Tem Montesino, to continue your remarks.
Yeah, like I said, it's just it's the most balanced, and in my view, it's all the undercount and that I believe in my district, where just walking around the neighborhoods and talking to people when I was running, I just saw the disparities that people for reasons of working so late or not knowing about it or being fearful. Sometimes didn't get counted. So that's all my comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other comments? Councilman Dutra.
Thank you, Mayor. So yeah, I agree with the Mayor Pro Tem. Our population didn't increase by much. So, really doing a huge shakeup beyond the boundaries that currently exist doesn't make sense for me at this time. And, this passed unanimously from a committee that we all chose our representatives to represent us. And so I'm going to be standing with the committee's suggestion that they put forward to us.
All right, any other comments? Councilman Hurst?
Yes, I too support the Rivera plan. I think it's the least disruptive. It provides the most continuity. It's the most balanced plan population-wise. And, I've been through 2 or 3 or more of these redistricting plans, and they all change a little bit. And I think some of the points made about what's on one side of the street and the other side of the street are certainly valid, but that happens wherever you draw a line. And so good representation will fix those gaps and certainly bridge those inequities if we give it a chance. And I think that this particular Rivera map is probably the best that we can do under these circumstances, at least. But let me point out to you, a third of Watsonville is in the second supervisorial district. You can see the Green Valley Road there, and we don't have a lot of input over that. And you might notice that there's a jigsaw puzzle up at the very top. There's another county issue that we all need to work on sometime and try and unify those areas under one jurisdiction. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments from the council? Okay, Councilwoman Quiroz Carter.
Mayor, I'm wondering if I would clarify, if I could ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Is it too late for that? So I have comment and a question, if that's all right. So I feel a little conflicted. I'm looking at District 2, and we are, I believe, the smallest district. And it does concern me a bit when we make our district smaller. That does concern me, looking at clear boundaries and where those boundaries were drawn, when those boundaries are in what seems to be socioeconomic lines. That does concern me. And I'm just wondering, with those, with the Rivera plan, with the little tail that was cut off and the piece that was added on, if that was equitable. And so I'm wondering if that piece that was cut off with the piece that was added back on, if that would be equitable. And so I'm wondering if that question can be answered before I can make my decision. Thank you.
And that would be Mr. Wagaman. And what the equitable and what do you understand, Mr. Wagaman, what Councilwoman Quiroz Carter is asking?
I don't know if I can, but I can take my best shot.
Okay,
which is that when you talk about a community of interest, you are looking at who are the people who should be together, who have common social and economic interests that should be, again, together for purposes of fair representation. Who that particular area best shares a community of interest with is something I don't have a data set on. I can look at things like the American Community Survey, but that's really, you know your community best, and this body as a whole needs to answer that question. Again, if you're pursuing something like this plan about who does this area in fact best go with. As you heard from members of the committee, part of their concern was that there had been an undercount in District 2 and wanting to leave that district a little smaller on the assumption that some people were quite frankly missed in that area. Whether that's a more quote unquote equitable result versus keeping that area in a district that, depending on what it has the strongest ties to from a community of interest standpoint, balancing, trying to keep districts of equal size. These are all trade-offs. And so I don't have a clean-cut answer to say, this is the more equitable plan than the other plan. It really is a decision of this body about which plan is going to result in the fairest representation going forward. I'm sorry not to be able to give you a less squishy answer than that.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And you have further comments? Councilman, okay, thank you. Councilman Estrada?
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question for Mr. Wegman. Do we know what percentage of each household completed the survey? I think we have an overall count, right, in the city, which was, what was the overall count for the city of Watsonville? What was, how many?
I don't know that
reported?
number off the top of my head for Watsonville. I can tell you what the marker the body used, and I can put it on the screen to try to figure out where that undercount was most likely to happen. Is they looked at, this is data created by the California Census Bureau, which is separate from the US Census Bureau. And it created what's called a hard count index. And these warmer areas, the reds and the oranges, are the areas they identified as being most vulnerable to an undercount. And as you can see, those kind of are more oriented towards particularly districts 1 and 2. And so that's where they generated that information from. We did look at some other information from what's called the American Community Survey, which is a federal survey. And those looked at things like, renters, income, those kinds of issues, immigration rates. And again, I'm sure for all of you who live there, this is not surprising that those areas are where those concentrations were. And the hard count index is based on a lot of those measures. And so that was the way you try to do that. But there isn't the only measure we get from the federal government on this kind of micro level is how many people self-responded. You don't get information on, there's not this is how many people we think we missed count, unfortunately, and certainly not on this level of geography.
Okay.
And then my second question was, you mentioned that in some cases it was okay to look at race, and in other cases it shouldn't be considered. Were there areas in the city that were considered, where race was considered?
So to clarify, there's two parts. One is that race and ethnicity cannot be the predominant factor in the process. So you can't say, I'm drawing these lines in order to, for the sole purpose of keeping X group whole, racial ethnic group. Conversely, the Federal Voting Rights Act in certain places requires lines to be drawn in certain ways in order to protect the voting rights of certain classes. That is something throughout the entire process with every single plan. Myself, along with your outside counsel, were looking to see if there was a potential Federal Voting Rights Act issue. As a practical matter, we never ran into one because again, the city is just so diverse. So it was always in the background, but never factor. The only places you really did see race and ethnicity come up was not race and ethnicity as a standalone, but rather where race and ethnicity corresponds to other issues. So there was certainly discussion about, for example, areas where you had higher immigrant communities, which correlated to those harder to count communities, which correlated to that exposure to potentially having been missed in the census. So only in that context really is a secondary to those other issues.
Okay, I really appreciate that clarification, Michael. Thank you.
All right, thank
Those
you.
are my
And
questions.
thank you, Councilman Estrada. Is there anyone else who would like to comment? All right, then I guess we could go to a roll call vote.
Dutra,
Yes.
Estrada,
No.
Garcia,
No.
Hurst,
Yes,
Montesino,
Yes.
Quiroz Carter,
No.
Parker.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Could you clarify for us the next step in this? I know we talked about it at the very beginning.
I'll step in and then either council or staff may want to, because this is beyond my part. The next part will be, I'm going to prepare the materials that would be used for the formal adoption process. There's some things that need to be done. So for example, we have to produce what are called meets and bounds, which is the verbal description of this map. So, District 3's boundaries consist of heading, south along Green Valley Road until you hit the 152, hooking a right until you hit the city boundary, that kind of a thing. So we'll put together those materials so that the formal adoption can be considered on that next meeting, which is set for I'm just looking at the date, for February the 8th. So that's when you would have to formally adopt the plan.
Okay, and is there any other
Again,
input
staff
for
or
next
staff or
steps?
council may have something to correct there.
Yeah, thank you.
This is Tom Willis, outside counsel. I just like to clarify that Mr. Wagaman is correct, but we will need to have a second public hearing at that February 8th meeting. So before you adopt, you want to still have comment for people to talk to you about those other plans if they want to, and that plan.
Okay.
Just to clarify, so at the next meeting, the council will be having the ordinance introduced and the public hearing, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that and moving us forward. And then we'll move on to our emergency items added to the agenda, of which we have none at this time. So then we will adjourn this meeting, and I thank everyone for their service on the committee. And we'll see you next Tuesday on the 25th. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
thank
Thank
you,
you, Mr.
everyone.
Wagaman.
Thank you, Mr. Wagaman. Thank you, Mr. Willis.
Thank you.